Alu, what is our fourth main topic today?
Topic number 4 comes to us from Steve Calderon, who says, Black Panther 2 debuts with $180 million this weekend, beating Hunger Games, Catching Fire to become the biggest November opening. However, the movie opened lower than the first Black Panther and Doctor Strange 2. There's no serious competition for Panther to face in the next 4 weekends until Avatar 2 comes out. Do you think the movie will reach $1 billion worldwide before Avatar arrives?
All right, Steve, thanks a lot for saying that in. You know, it came in a little under what I was predicting. I predicted, I think, Ray, what was my number? 197?
Yeah, I said 200.
I think I called 197, and it came in at 180. So I missed by about $17 million. It's close, whatever. It did not crack the top 10 biggest opening films of all time. But it's still the number one November release of all time. Think about that. Wrap your heads around that. For as long as the movie industry has been around, no film in the month of November has ever opened bigger than Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. And number 13 all time. Think about the 30,000 movies that have come out in the history of Hollywood, 30, 40,000, whatever movies that have come out in the history of Hollywood. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever has come out as the 13th biggest in history. Now, you're right. I was surprised to hear that it did open to lower than Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. We talked last week about the fact that it was falling behind in pre-advanced sales than Doctor Strange was. Did come in a little below that. This comes to us from the folks over at Variety who wrote the following. As it stands, Wakanda Forever has the second biggest domestic debut of the year behind the $187.4 million launch of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. It also commands the third best pandemic era bow behind the aforementioned Doctor Strange adventure and Spider-Man No Way Home, which got started with $260 million. Tony Chambers, executive vice president and head of theatrical distribution at Disney, Marvel's parent company, ascribed the film's success to the Marvel track record as well as the quality of the filmmaking. That again comes to us from Variety. Now, Ray or Taylor, if one of you guys can look up, what did the first Black Panther make at the box office? I think it was north of 200 million. I think the first Black Panther made north of 200 million. So should it be considered a disappointment that the first Black Panther made significantly more money at the box office in its opening weekend than the second Black Panther did? Maybe a little bit. Do we got that opening?
It's 202, right?
202. So like $22 million more, right? And you kind of hope to see with your franchises that the trajectory goes this way, not that way. I don't find that tremendously surprising because, as I've said for the last year or so, they faced a very, very difficult challenge in that they were a sequel to a super popular movie without their lead actor and without their main character. And that was going to hurt. To be honest, I think that makes the $180 million opening astonishingly impressive. Astonishingly impressive. Considering, again, imagine watching Iron Man, a new Iron Man movie tomorrow, but it doesn't have Tony Stark and it doesn't have Robert Downey Jr. How much money does that movie make? It makes money. It doesn't make Tony Stark money, right? It doesn't make that money. So I think the fact that it was without T'Challa and without Chadwick Boseman, yet still made $180 million is still pretty damn impressive. Breaking the November box office record, pretty damn impressive. We're almost at the end of the year now. Second biggest opening of the year, pretty damn impressive. Third biggest opening of the pandemic era, pretty damn impressive. Now, of course, that's going to fall a spot once Avatar opens. I think Avatar is probably going to come in north of 180 million, but I don't know that's going to come out tremendously north of 180 million. So we'll see that too. So at the end of the day, would they have liked to have seen this been a little bit higher? Probably. It's at the lower end of the projections, which was 175 to 200 million. Granted, I still think you look at this and take it as a win, especially when you're looking at its contemporary film, Black Adam, with the biggest movie star in the world, that opened at $67 million. And this came out without its star, without its main character, and it made nearly triple that. I don't think there's any other way to cut it other than to say that this is a big win for this movie. Even it could have been bigger, sure. Still an unmitigated success. Absolute huge success. Chris, you see these numbers. Mm-hmm. I mean, some people were thinking like me, it could have been closer to 200 million. Maybe it could have flirted with that first Black Panther number.
I really thought it was going to get that.
But, it didn't. But it made the 13th biggest opening in the history of cinema. How do you think we should look at this result?
Definitely as a win, because I do think this is going to have legs, not only because there's not a lot of competition, but this is a movie that people are going to go back and see multiple times. It's going to have a really, really great kind of word of mouth thing to it too, for people who were maybe waiting to see, hey, how do they handle everything? I'm not sure I'm going to go see the movie. I think people are going to go get in there now. I think the reviews are fairly good for this, right? It's still at about an 86% on Rotten Tomatoes.
86, 85,
something like
84,
that.
somewhere in the mid 80s.
You know, I think it's going to do really, really well. I do still think that Avatar is going to make more money than this. I think that's the one that's going to really take the box office. But I think this is great for them. I think this is a really, really great win, especially considering everything they had to go through to make this film.
You know, I was doing my open spoiler discussion for this, and I said, you know, wherever you fall on the spectrum, whether you hated this movie, whether you were okay with the movie, whether you loved the movie, I think everybody has to acknowledge that given the circumstances, what Ryan Coogler had to do was Herculean. Like, was absolutely Herculean to pull this movie off, regardless of what you thought about the end result. The fact that Ryan Coogler was able to pull this movie together and put out what he does, and without your star, without your main character, you still make $180 million at the opening weekend box office. I think this, while this is probably my least favorite Ryan Coogler movie, to me, it just elevates Ryan Coogler even more in my estimation. Hey guys, we want to take a second to thank the sponsor of this video, MasterClass. You guys know we have been sponsored by MasterClass, and we love them here at the John Campea Show for giving us in-depth information on a wide variety of topics from the world's best experts. With MasterClass, you can learn from the world's best minds anytime, anywhere, and at your own pace. You can learn the art of filmmaking from James Cameron, improve your cooking skills from Gordon Ramsay, or learn how to make compelling YouTube videos from Marquise Brownlee. With over 150 classes from a range of world-class instructors, that thing you've always wanted to do is closer than you think. I was recently watching through the independent filmmaking course by Spike Lee, and I found it fascinating that not only did he cover the broader topics like working with actors, but he also gets into finer details like working with a cinematographer and how to properly audition a DP for your project. It was fascinating. So guys, I highly recommend that you check it out. Get unlimited access to every class, and as a John Campea Show listener, you get 15% off an annual membership. Go to masterclass.com/Campea now. That's masterclass.com/Campea for 15% off Masterclass. Anyway, when you look at the results of the opening weekend for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, what stands out to you?
Well, I'm happy it made as much as it did. One, it's really long, so there's less
really
showings in theaters. But two, you know, if you think about Black Panther, you were coming off of the great introduction of Chadwick Boseman in Civil War. And at the center of Black Panther, you also had Killmonger. So you had Michael B. Jordan going up against Chad Boseman, and from just a kick-ass movie perspective, you had this really great villain, you know, going up against a character that was almost immediately beloved in Civil War, in Black Panther. So there were more fireworks. Now, Namor is, I thought, highlighted this movie. Really liked, but his beef with Wakanda was more ethical and moral and colonial. He had the conflict of this movie is very, very different, and this movie doesn't promise. I mean, what's amazing to me about this film is it's about I hate to say this for my fans out there or fans of superhero movies, but this movie is about the power of the feminine. It's about the power of mothers and daughters and how they can bond through things like grief and how they get together. Like, I recognize my mother and grandmother in this movie, and aunts and that I've known, and I was totally surprised by this. And when I was sitting in the theater, sitting behind, you know, I said that there was like 10 black women sitting behind me, and their emotional response was extreme. I mean, they were crying, and I heard a friend of mine, Lael Rockwell, went and saw. A woman came with her 2 sons, and was sitting next to him, and at the end of the movie put her hand, didn't even know him, put her hand on his hand, and said to him, "I lost my son from cancer about 6 months ago." And in sitting here and watching, this is what she told, total stranger. She said, "By watching this movie, I feel somewhat healed." Who would have thought that would have happened in a superhero movie? So this movie, and I think a lot of pushback in the fan community is because it's doing something totally different. And when I saw this the second time, I'm like, you know what? The fact that this movie has been made and that Ryan Coogler was able to turn this story into an MCU movie, I felt it more moving the second time I watched it because I looked at it from a totally different perspective. And I'm going to be very curious to see how this movie works in weekends 2 and 3, because I think this movie is going to be recognized for something that it is and not something that it isn't. And I think we're going to get more repeat viewings. I wouldn't be surprised if more women and mothers go see this movie than your standard male audience.
I think when we move into the other part of the question that the viewer wrote in and asked is, do I see this movie getting to $1 billion? I don't.
I don't either.
I don't think this movie will get to $1 billion. And there's a couple of factors in that. Number one, it's not going to get a couple of markets that it had before. It's not going to get the Russian market. It's not going to get the Chinese market. So there's that. Secondly, again, it's the same thing that it felt with its opening weekend. It does not have its star. It does not have its lead character. And while this will be a subjective thing, it's simply not as good as the first Black Panther movie. It did a lot of really incredible special things in it, but I think it's just not as good. I don't think it has the rewatchability that the first one did. And so while it's going to be like the opening weekend, I think it's going to have incredible success, but I don't see it getting to $1 billion.
I agree with you, but I do think that this movie is going to tap into something that Captain Marvel tapped into, which was the female audience. And, you know, traditionally, these movies do skew more male than female. But I do think that this film has something in it for women audiences in particular that I didn't expect, but I've seen it twice now. And I've seen the emotional impact that this movie has on the female audience that I didn't expect. And I have to say, I respect the hell out of Ryan Coogler for leaning into that. By the way, I'm very angry with one particular character that I love.
Well, yeah, we will not go into that.
I'm not angry with her.
Yeah, no. Don't even say another word. Don't
explain further.
Just no more. Actually, you know, Alou, before coming back and getting back into town, you had a chance to see Black Panther: Wakanda Forever. I mean, just quickly, what was your impression of the movie, and what do you think? Were you surprised by the $180 million? Do you think it can cross $1 billion? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, $1 billion is hard. Did the first one make $1 billion?
Yeah, the first one made 1.2
billion.
I think,
okay. Man, that's a hard number, and I just think this movie has just so much going against it. Like, I loved it, obviously, but like, there were so many people already off the bat, like, oh, Chadwick's not in it, I'm not going to see it. The women are at the helm, I'm not going to see it, and it's just like, I didn't even feel like it was like a woman movie, which is what people were kind of peddling. They were like, oh, it's going to be like girl power, and it's going to be like Captain Marvel.
There was none of that in the movie.
At all.
Like, not once in this movie
at all
did any character ever say any kind of line with, as women, we will say. There's not one line of that in the entire movie.
Yeah.
There's
and
not.
I just wanted to say really quickly about the visuals, like the underwater Talican scenes and all that. I was like, yes, Black Panther, Way of Water, let's go. Like, I was like all about that. The Disney special effects team, amazing. And I loved like the camaraderie. It wasn't girl power, it was girl camaraderie. Like seeing Shuri and Riri, oh yes, queens. Like, I don't know, I was living.
No, the one thing that it does have going in its favor, for a potential $1 billion run is the fact that they mentioned in the email, it ain't got no competition. Yeah. Like for the next 4 weeks, it has nothing but a clear runway in front of it. So if it's going to do it, this is its opportunity. Because Black Adam, which is the most significant thing in theaters otherwise, it made like $8 million this weekend, right? So it literally has no competition. So if it's going to do it, that's its key. If it's going to get to that $1 billion.
Yeah, I just think that, you know, again, seeing it for that a second time, man, I think this is tapping into something that I wasn't expecting. And I've seen audiences now react to this twice, specifically the female audience. And it has power. Am I wrong? I mean,
I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like I was being slapped in the face with like a feminist I don't mean feminist. I mean, it's tapping the female
into
audience.
The idea of what does it mean to be a mother? And what does it mean to be a sister? And like you said, getting Riri, I don't think it's like some overt feminist tract. But I'll tell you something. I think that anyone who is a mother who's lost a son,
Yeah.
who's felt that grief.
Yeah,
There's real, genuine emotional power
100%.
in this. I wish I could take my mom to see this movie.
Yeah, I was
But she
talking
doesn't
with
know who
my,
Black
my
Panther
friend
is.
who I went with about how Ryan Coogler did something different with this movie, and it sucks because he was forced to do this. But at the same time, we were talking about how, you see the superhero movies and, think about the first Captain America movie. There's action and awesome stuff. There's a love story, But now we're getting like these superhero movies that there's more depth, like even just looking at Miss Marvel and the Pakistani community and like all those kind of things. You're getting that with Black Panther now of like loss and culture. And there was like a whole thing with religion. I won't go too much into it in Black Panther, but just their religion and spirit world and all this kind of different stuff. And we're getting more nuanced stories in superhero films now, which is really cool.
I think so too.
I do think Avatar 2 is going to do better. I think Avatar 2 I don't know if it'll cross 200 million opening weekend, but I think it'll do better. I think it will cross the $1 billion mark worldwide. But I mean, this is the Black Panther's chance to do it. Anyway, guys, question is for you. How do you see this opening weekend number, this record-setting number of Black Panther Wakanda Forever, $180 million, 13th biggest opening in cinematic history, biggest opening ever in the month of November, second biggest opening of the year. How do you guys take it? Maybe some people see it as a disappointment. Maybe some people see it for the win that it is. Whatever you guys think, jump down to the comment section below and let us know your thoughts.